Well, you can probably see the difference. So the calipers now are red, and the discs have holes in them, right, to help them cool down after hard brake application. And we have this one, right? So 3 out of 4. But then over here, for some reason, we have this. What the heck? So new rotor, new pads, but the caliper is still the black one, Brembo, right? And what's funny is that these ones, they don't have any signage on them, but under the paint it says Brembo. So these are also Brembos, but the guy at the shop was telling me that the painting did not look how new Brembo calipers, look. And I went to the website of this Power Stop, right? That's the kit, Power Stop. And if you start looking into reading like the fine print, like everything is like the rest is brand new, the pads and the rotors, the discs. But turns out calipers are remanufactured, so they're not brand new. So that's why this kit was actually a relatively cheap. It was like $850, I think, for the for all 4 wheels. So calipers, rotors, and pads, but they charge me this thing. They charge you $250, I think, which is a core charge. So you have to return your old brakes to them, and then they will credit you that money. So because there's some shipping involved, it's best to do it do not do it like I did from another country. It's best to buy it somewhere close to you. So ideally you want to go, let's say if you live in Ohio, right, you can go to Summit Racing store and drop them off, because it's a lot of weight. But for me, they made it easier for Canadians. There was an issue with one caliper, and that's why that factory one, the genuine Brembo, is there, because there was an issue with one caliper, which I'll talk about in a second. But so I had to exchange it, and they do have a couple of online retailers here in Canada, but because I bought it from Ohio, through their website, and then picked it up at the store in Ohio, they said I had to send it back to them. And they sent me a link to the return form, and turns out specifically for Canada they have an address in Mississauga, Ontario, and so at least it was not that bad, So from Cambridge, I sent it to Mississauga, which is like 50 miles away. It was $14 Canadian, roughly $10 US. Now what the issue was, and I gotta say that the mechanic told me that they had lots of issues with the calipers, specifically calipers, because they're remanufactured, very low quality of remanufacturing. They found like they're supposed to be like 8 washers, and only 1 was there, like somewhere in there, like there was missing washers. So which cost me $10. 13 Canadian, 10 US for extra washers. And then a pin, one caliper had a missing pin in there, like in the spring. The guy found it somewhere. They didn't even charge me. But the biggest problem was that these rear calipers, they have what's known as a bleeding screw. So once they're installed, they have to open these screws to let the air out of the system. Otherwise, your brakes are not gonna work. And as soon as the guy touched that screw on this caliper on the driver's side, the threading basically was gone. You know, he didn't even tighten it. He was just, you know, opening it, turning the screw into the open position, and it's just everything was loose, so he couldn't either tighten it or open it anymore, and so there's nothing you can do, you know. And he says if this was a local supplier, they would just have sent for, you know, replacement. But I spent like probably 40 minutes on the phone with Summit Racing, and the first thing they said is that because the one box contains two calipers, because they're different, two for the front, two for the rear, so there were two boxes with calipers. And so Summit Racing suggested that we take off the passenger side caliper and return them as a kit. And the shop spent like 5 hours doing this, installing, you know, even though normally it's supposed to take 3. And I talked to them, said, guys, I don't want it to take that one off, because there may be some more issues, right, when you take things off and then you reinstall it. And they were like shaking their heads, yeah, they don't want to do it. And so I told the lady, I said, no, I'm gonna return this one, the defective one, because all others are okay. And I said, but I said, I need the driver's side, left side. And she says, well, we're not sure which ones goes which, so we have to send you the kit with 2 calipers. I said, okay, no problem, just send me the kit. I'll send you the remaining one together with the bad one. I said, just charge my credit card, you know, like for a deposit or something, right? I just want to get it done. And they said, okay, so here's the return authorization form. Here's how you do it. So just send it 50 miles to Mississauga. They'll take it from there. And they'll send me the new kit, like the box. And then I have to return the core. I have to return the brakes, like the genuine stuff that this car came with. And so it was lots of problems, and all because of these calipers. Like, if I knew that the calipers were remanufactured, you know, I don't like doing this. It's brakes, you know, it's like real serious stuff. There was another kit which is much cheaper, the same stuff except no calipers. You just reuse your factory calipers. But I thought it would be nicer to have these new ones, and actually I thought they were bigger or, you know, different, but the mechanic showed me like he held them together and they look pretty much the same, except these ones are red, you know. But yeah, the other motivation was to have red calipers, because, you know, most like fancy race cars, they have these red, you know, calipers, and they're powder coated, so they're not gonna get you know, that black, you know, shade. They're gonna stay red for a long time, even though the quality of painting is not the best. But, you know, even I came out of the Boston Pizza over there, from 30 meters, 100 feet away, I could see my new red calipers. And so that's the issue. So I just wanted to mention this for people that are looking to upgrade their brakes. So make sure you read the fine print, because actually I went back to Summit Racing and I read again very carefully the entire description, and only then I was able to see that actually Summit Racing did disclose. But like I said, you have to be, you know, an eagle to look into that. They did disclose that the calipers were remanufactured, proudly remanufactured in Chicago by Price Stop. But like I said, lots of issues. Do not buy remanufactured components. And so buy them somewhere close to you, because you will have to return the core. Otherwise, the shipping will be too expensive. Ideally, you want to buy it from a local supplier. You know, if they have a vendor or retailer, like a dealer in your area, that would be the best, because you know it's a very big job. And actually the guy said, are you replacing calipers as well? And I said, what's the big deal? And turns out, if I was just changing the rotors and pads, it would be much simpler, because they said calipers, it's lots of issues, you know, it makes the job much more complicated. So if I was doing this again, now that I know that the calipers were remanufactured, and I know that calipers are a pain in the butt to install and, you know, reinstall, I would just go with the regular kit, just with the, you know, new rotors and new brake pads, and just keep my original calipers. And actually what the shop guy told me, he says he did this on his car. Basically he just repainted the calipers, you know, he just painted them, I think he said his were kind of like old, and so he repainted them black, but he says you can repaint them red, you know. They will not look as nice as maybe as these ones, but you know, it's much cheaper. And so that's my experience. Oh yeah, and last but not least, by the time I left the shop and I was on the phone with Summit Racing, it was already almost 6 o'clock, and the shop is supposed to close at 5. So the guys were rushing, and they didn't do a road test, you know. And I remember reading something in the instructions from the power stop saying that, you know, here's what you have to do. You have to, you know, break in your brake system, you know. And I asked the mechanic, I said, you guys gonna tell me how to do this? Just give me like a quick lesson. And he says, don't worry about it, we're gonna take care of it. And then, you know, I take the car, I drove out, and I see that my pedal like goes very far, like before the brakes take effect. I have to push the pedal much further than before, you know. And then if I tap it again, it becomes much shorter. So basically the brakes became maybe 10 times worse than before. So tomorrow I'm gonna go back to the shop and ask him to readjust it. So it's either not enough pressure, or I don't know, too much free play. But if it was just free play, then why the double tapping? When you double tap the brakes, the distance becomes much shorter, you know. So it's but basically some kind of adjustment is needed. I'm not an expert on brakes. You see, when you push like second and third time, the actual free play becomes very, very small. But the first time, the pedal goes pretty much all the way into the floor. Like, so basically, if I had brakes like this, when I went to a race course, I would hit a tree or something, you know. So always make sure that the shop is not in a rush, and they do a road test of your brakes after installation. Yeah, this is the next day. So the guy is on the hoist, and the only thing they could find is that there's probably air, and so they raise the rear at a, see, like the rear is raised taller than the front, and that's what might help to evacuate the air from the system.